Join us today on the Final Hour podcast as we talk about an ancient goddess that is very prevalent in America today. It's actually a demonic principality that has been around in all major cultures from the very beginning.
We interrupt your program to issue a severe warning for an impending emergency making its way to your area. We urge you to be watchmen of the times and to be prepared with the essential knowledge and supplies for the wake of the final hour.
Welcome to the Final Hour podcast, coming to you from the original Living Word Christian Center out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We want to thank you so much for viewing us or listening to us, whether if it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Now you can catch us on Rumble.
Yeah.
And today is Thursday, December 1st, and this podcast will be airing on late Monday, midnight, or you could say within the first few minutes of Tuesday morning.
It's Tuesday.
If
you know
it's
what?
midnight, it has to be Tuesday.
It has to be Tuesday. And I got an email from someone, and the header said, "She is right."
Oh.
What's it? Who?
Gail. Thank you, Gail.
Shout out to Gail.
Shout
right.
out to Gail.
You're right.
So I should...
Jim's wrong.
I'm
I'm
one of those
right.
people that's just too smart to come out of the rain, right?
If that's what you want to tell yourself.
Okay.
Is that what we're saying?
Have you ever met those really
Smart.
intelligent people that just have trouble in regular life
But
yeah.
with things like that? Okay.
common sense isn't common. See, John Carlson is right.
Okay. Shout out to John Carlson if he
Absolutely.
ever listens. Okay.
JC Jr.
My name is Jim Hammond,
I'm Lonaiah Farrell.
the compulsive interrupter.
I'm John Gap.
Yes, that was a joke.
Ha ha.
That was a joke.
Ha.
And so, listen, we have some merchandise for you.
Do you want to hold?
Oh,
the,
you guys-
want to hold the orange?
Yeah, the talking
This
orange.
is the talking orange.
It's not that the orange talks. You have to hold it while
It's
you talk.
therapy. It's therapy. We're working through some things on the Final Hour podcast. Yeah, I'm
Talking, you need the orange.
Speaking of the merch, you guys, I know I'm cutting you off. It is amazing stuff. If you haven't gotten it yet, I think I've ordered one of everything.
Speaking
I
of
love
fruit, is there going to be a sticker that I can put on the front of the?
Yeah, there's supposed to be a sticker.
Sweet.
Eventually stickers.
And then you can look at the logo instead of.
no, this
Apple
stuff,
logo.
it's not like the merchandise that you see here at the church. Okay, it's very different
What's that
style.
supposed to mean?
That was a joke. Okay, I don't.
The good thing about the merch is there's something for everybody in it. Honestly, there's
Yeah.
a little.
Yes.
I'm actually pretty stoked about a
Yeah.
few things.
Yeah.
That's
Did
If
you
you're
get
a-
them
if
yet,
you're-
Johnny?
Not yet. I will.
Okay.
I have trouble with this word, but if you're a minimalist,
Yeah.
Minimalist.
You
that
nailed it.
there's that.
I'm a minimalist, and I
and
like it.
But if you like a little more, it's very classy how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just to throw this in, you get the merchandise by going on the Final Hour podcast website, www.alloneword.thefinalhourpodcast.com. You can get it there. The church website will have it up.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, just to give you a heads up, we are in early discussions of a tour of a Final Hour podcast tour to Israel next fall.
I have
And
always wanted to go.
yeah,
Have
you're
you?
going
It's amazing.
in October
So are
or
you,
November.
Jeremiah?
Yes, if he can get, if they let him
JD?
go.
Oh, they'll let him go.
October and
Let my
November
people go.
20. Hold on to the talking orange.
Then I get to talk the whole time.
Right, okay.
Okay. You don't
That
know
way,
how that works,
it's
do
never
ya?
it's never interrupting. Then if you have the orange,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He kind of like. Go
I was
ahead,
trying to make
Jim.
the point where you should have it before you speak, right?
Okay, go ahead.
Just kidding. But okay, we want this tour in 2023 to Israel. We're going to open it up to the Final Hour podcast viewers, listeners, subscribers first. We're not even going to promote it here at church in the pulpit until like January. And so, but we're just, before we make it official, we're looking at this new global passport thing. Because I'm not going to Israel if I've got to get another vax, all right? And so And that's, I wouldn't even do a tour if that were the case.
Yeah.
Israel's
Right.
wide open, but they passed the world, country by country, has
The WHO.
G20.
the world, the Chinese run
Yeah.
World Health Organization has got everyone to take on this global passport. Like if you're going to travel the world, it's going to be a global passport. I feel like it's going to take a few years to roll out, right? So let's
Probably.
get the tour to Israel in. One comment, I know a lot of you probably don't watch the World Cup.
I do.
Yes,
I have been.
Soccer is not a big thing here in the U.S. Although, if you follow youth soccer, we have one of the most extensive youth soccer programs in the world, and
Absolutely.
that's why no one can understand why the men, the United States men, have never done anything
Right.
in the World Cup. And I have seen us reach this round of 16
Yep.
before.
Yep.
Just want to shout out to them.
Christian Pulisic.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully he can play. But
be-
that was
He
fine.
said he will be there
He'll be
Saturday
there.
from the hospital bed.
I think it's very interesting that we had to, in order to advance, and it would have been considered a failure if we would not have advanced.
Yeah.
We had to beat Iran. We had to beat them. We could not tie them. We had to beat them. So we're playing Iran on the biggest stage. This is like the Super Bowl for the world.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it only
Yeah.
comes in around every 4 years. And so I only got to see the last 3 minutes because I was here at work, but and I got home and watched us playing scared and holding on by the
Especially on the extra time, it was.
Yeah.
It was
that's what I'm
wild.
saying. We were
Yeah.
playing scared. I've never, you don't see soccer teams at that level play scared. I thought Iran probably should have scored in that last 2 minutes,
was
but
close, too.
regardless, we advanced. Shout out to that.
John obviously wasn't at work.
No, I was.
I'm kidding.
We've
It was
got,
a snow day. Remember how much snow came on that day?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
was
it?
still at work.
Yeah, that was the snow day. That was like
Tuesday?
7 inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
we just had 7 inches up here 2
It
days
snowed
ago.
all day.
And we've gotten some feedback that it's nice to take a break from the news that's not actually in the news. We did that last week.
Yep.
And we won't always do that, but we're going to do it again this week as we stay on the point, just giving an outline or a preview of Jonathan Cahn's new book called Return of the Gods. Rabbi Jonathan Cahn is a world-renowned, best-selling author of multiple books. Harbinger, which was a huge hit. Harbinger
Huge hit.
2.
Yep.
A book called Mystery of the Shemitah, a book called The Oracle, another one called Book of Mysteries. You can get all these books on Amazon. His new one has sold out a couple of times just in our church bookstore,
Yeah.
called Return of the Gods, and I got permission from him personally just to preview this because it's so very interesting.
Can I just say something? In reading this book or, typing this message out, it does show, because you kind of sit there and you look at the news and we hear our stories all the time
Yeah.
that we're reading here, and you're like, how are these things happening? And this
Right.
gives like the background and context to all that. Like so many light bulbs since doing this, I'm like, that explains it all.
Yep.
And these are the things that have happened in every major culture
Yes.
and dominant country that's ever been, is what makes it very interesting. Last week we talked about, out of Rabbi Cahn's book, the God out of the Old Testament, which there's a strong principality behind it, is what it is. That's what it really is.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful demon, high-ranking demon, behind the God that was called Baal. All right?
Yeah.
And we talked about how it's wreaking havoc in a lot of ways in America today, and doing it the same way, the same order as you can read of what happened in the Bible. It's called paganism, is what that God Baal is all about. And it's all connected to principalities. And just to show you one of the last things we looked at last week in Acts 17:22, and out of the Amplified, Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, "You men of Athens, I perceive that you are worshiping actual demons." All right, is that what that Greek word's in the King James? It says you're superstitious. But Mars Hill was where the Athenians had rows and rows and rows of statues. They were actually idols of their gods.
Right.
It's a very spiritual place for them. And Paul was there and he's pointing at all these idols, and he's like, "You're worshiping demons," is what he says. And they were actually, what he's saying is they were actually giving offerings. The Greek word there is dominania, which is the same word used in the Septuagint. That stands for the Hebrew word shedim, which refers to a spirit, a principality, an occultic entity / God. When the Israelites offered their children, they put their babies into the gods' mouths in these large idols, banged a bunch of drums real loud so you couldn't hear the babies screaming as they burned in the fire that was roaring in the mouths of these idols. And you know, they were sacrificing their babies, and they were doing it to specific gods. All right. The same way the Athenians were offering up sacrifices to specific gods of the pagan world. They just didn't use their children. Yeah, in the Greek world, they didn't just use they didn't use their children like the Israelites were. Although I'm sure that she would have had them doing that. This goddess. These are actual spiritual entities. The same way the Romans and the Greeks had gods named Jupiter, Vesta, Apollo. These are not made up by human beings type characters. They're actually demonic spirits.
Yeah.
I know, but don't you feel like as a mother or a parent, you would have to be possessed by something to willingly put your child on an altar and watch them burn?
It is.
I mean, you
you have to be in such a mental disparity, or depravity.
Yes.
Like to
think that's
deceived.
normal.
So
Deceived.
To be like,
oppression.
I'm going to put my baby on this burning hot.
Right.
And didn't you say, I don't know if you've said it on here before, but they like pound drums and stuff so you can't hear.
They pound the drums so you can't hear the baby screaming. This is what was going on in the Bible. It talks about in the Bible. But you know, these are actually demonic spirits that are behind these gods. And Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. You know, these gods keep reproducing themselves. And if you look carefully, you know, what we see in ancient Babylon and ancient Assyria, in these cultures, these empires, the Assyrian Empire, it's no different. It's really, we're headed there. We're there. These gods are here. And
they're always taking different names and maybe a little bit different look, but
repackaged.
It's repackaged, yeah.
And another point that he makes in his book is we don't have time to go into. A god can possess a country, just like the Nazis. That was a type of possession. When you get a whole country behind the extermination of 12 to 14 million Jews. And when Paul is telling the Athenians in Acts 17 at Mars Hill, and we read these scriptures in detail last week, you're not supposed to be worshiping things made with your own hands.
Yeah.
The Greek word there is techna, which is where we get the word technology. It's very interesting. And obviously, you know, we make the technology with our own hands, man, today.
Yeah.
I just do not think it's much different when you're looking at our world today. You can't tell me that we're not close to worshiping our own technology in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And eventually we will be. And remember the episode we did on the giant statue-like things that are referenced in the book of Revelation that are going to show up in the tribulation. They're going to talk and they're going to move.
There's already a couple out there.
Yeah. I mean, these aren't replicas of the Antichrist right now, but these things are traveling around the country and they can move. You can put different faces on them. It speaks. You can put a lot of different voices to it.
Right.
You know, when these pagans would make the idol with their own hands, there would be confusion, or you could say disillusion that the actual made idol was a god.
Yeah.
And they did not understand that the spiritual that the spiritual entity of the demon behind it, you know, in many cases was a high-ranking demon, you know. They thought the idol itself was God, so there was a misunderstanding in the pagan world between reality and image, just like we have confusion today with so many people addicted to their Apple iPhones. It is their idol, in a sense.
Google Chromes.
Just like this virtual reality and technology today is completely confusing reality.
Yeah.
The same way the pagan world confused idols, what looked like between image and reality, right? I hope I said that right.
I think so.
What we see today, presently, is reality going away through all the technology.
For sure.
And virtual becomes more real.
Yeah.
It is.
You know?
You can buy real estate on virtual reality. Like you can buy people, real estate. I mean, you can make your own little city.
Yeah.
And you see people want to just like check out of here and go into there.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more a thing.
For sure.
This is all paganism. Hence the book, The Return of the Gods by Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. I'm skipping so much stuff in this book, and we talked about Baal and what he brings.
Yeah.
You can find this one in the Bible. It's a her. She comes out of the ancient Middle East in many different ways. The prostitutes of ancient Mesopotamia looked at this god as their protector. You have her in a lot of the mythologies. One myth, she stole all the other gods' sacred possessions. Another myth, you've got her at the gates of hell, banging on the gates of hell, demanding entrance. Jonathan Cahn calls her the enchantress. And in Sumerian mythology, her foremost lover was a god named Dumuzi. In Babylon, Dumuzi was known as Tammuz. Isn't this in Jonathan? This isn't in Jonathan Cahn's book, but think about, we've talked about Tammuz.
Yep.
A very well-known scholar I read believes Tammuz actually started out as Nimrod's son.
Yeah.
And Nimrod had a son, and Nimrod, first, he's a type of the Antichrist in the Bible, i.e., Babylon, i.e., the Tower of Babel. And his sorceress wife and Nimrod tried to have their son made into a god. And so there was also a time in the Bible that this goddess was known as Ashtoreth.
Yeah.
In the Bible, you can see her as Ashtoreth, talking about this goddess that's become very present in America today. She was right in there with Baal. She was everywhere.
Yeah.
She was one of the ones that Baal would bring in with him.
Yeah.
Remember last week, we took you into the meaning of Matthew 12:43 through 45? Let's just take a look at that.
Yeah.
Matthew 12:43 through 45.
Okay.
When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out, and when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. And they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first. Key phrase. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. All right? So he's talking to about a whole group of people. All right? Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. What? That they enter in and dwell there. They.
Yeah.
Remember, there was one. Now he brought his friends in. And Baal would always bring this one in. You can see this in the Bible. This goddess is not just known as in the Bible, her biblical name, Ashtoreth, in the Bible. I'll tell you, the Canaanites worshipped her.
Yeah.
And in the Canaanite mythology, she often appeared as Baal's wife. In Assyria, in Babylon, she showed up as Ishtar. And let me just take a moment. We'll never really know until we get to heaven, this next statement. But you've got some ministers out there that actually preach that they'll tell you there's no female angels / spiritual entities, female demon entities. And I just think that's wrong. Think about this. The Bible calls wisdom a her.
Yep.
Over and over and over. And wisdom is a spirit. How do I know that? Ephesians 1. I always pray to the God of my Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, that you would grant unto us the spirit of wisdom. Yet it calls this spirit of wisdom, her. David thought goodness and mercy, the Hebrew rabbis of old will write, when David said, goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life, he considered these are two angels.
Yeah.
Goodness and mercy were two angels following him around. So don't write in and tell me because you're going to believe an old school word of faith, dude. You'll never convince me that there are not female entities, okay, or even female angels. I just won't answer you if you're going to argue that point with me, because this is a goddess. Just like in Revelation, the whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
What's that? And I wonder if this very goddess we're talking about today is given even more powers. We had numerous.
Or maybe because she drinks the bloods of saints, she gets more powerful.
Right.
Maybe.
There's a whore of Babylon and in Revelation, and it is many commentators believe a demonic entity. Mm-hmm. It's a she. It's a very clear that it's a she. And I got off point there. This Ishtar, the ancient Sumerians called her Inanna. The Canaanites called her Astate. Astate. You see her in the Bible called Ashtoreth, and the Greeks, she came known as Aphrodite. And the Romans, she became the goddess of Venus. And all these goddesses had this exact same attributes.
Yeah.
The exact same worship type requirements. Mm-hmm. She modifies herself. She repackages herself. She shows up in multiple cultures and lands over multiple time frames. I'll tell you this, when the Christian faith could not be stopped by the Roman emperors in the rest of the Middle East, she had to exit the stage.
Yep.
Jonathan Cahn said this Pacific god had to go into exile, as the Romans tried so hard to stop it.
Yeah.
Okay, and they couldn't. It's almost like the more they persecuted it, and then the devil got smart and then turned it into a law that you had to be a Christian.
Right.
And they all got soft.
Yep.
Think about it. That's a whole nother. It's a whole nother subject, but.
It's got part of America's story there too.
You know, the Constantine making Christianity a law in a sense.
Yeah.
And so, and stop the persecution on Christians. In a way, hurt Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really did. But always this goddess had the same attributes in every culture. Had a lot to do with alcohol. Had a lot to do with sex. She was in some cultures, a tavern goddess of taverns, like a bar room type. Looking at the Bible, when Baal comes in, the next one that comes in with him is the goddess in the Bible. Her most common name is Ishtar, but in the Bible, when she's hanging with Baal, I've said it, she's called Ashtoreth. She's always got the same qualities. In each culture, always the same qualities. The Babylonian kings were performed ritual sex acts in her temple. Mm-hmm. Other qualities that you can see in culture after culture, time period after time period. She was also a goddess of war and destruction. We'll just call her Ishtar because that was her most common name. Jonathan Cahn is saying this is all the same spirit, the same principality. And when we opened the door for Baal, okay, in the 60s, all right, and we talked about that last week.
Yep.
Now a goddess, one of her names is the Enchantress, okay? And as soon as they took God out of the schools, separation of church and state, what's the very next thing that happens? The sexual revolution.
Right.
This, it's like you open the door to Baal.
Yeah.
Here comes Ashtoreth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And we said last week, you all see Baal. He tries to push God out, like we're doing, And the Enchantress, i.e. Ishtar, i.e. Ashtoreth, i.e. Aphrodite, i.e. Venus, i.e. Astarte, i.e. Inanna. These are all different cultures that she showed up in over time. These are all her different names where she repackaged herself. The Canaanites, The Sumerians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans called her Venus. She always did the same thing.
Yeah.
Same stuff going on. She had the sacred sex, the temple prostitution.
Right.
I love this according to Jonathan Cahn. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote, this is what he wrote, the women of Babylon were required or heavily pushed by their religious customs to sit in the temples of this goddess and perform the function that prostitutes perform, having relations with strangers for money. And according to Herodotus, every woman of the land in that empire, this tells you a lot about the Babylonians, was compelled to perform that act at least once in her life. And this is where you get these concepts of sacred sex, temple prostitution.
Right.
These all come from Ishtar.
Yeah.
And she is back.
I mean, it's more of especially what we've experienced in America over the last 60 years or so. But like you said, the sexual revolution is again a perversion of the good thing that God gave us in sex, in the relationship between a man and a woman, and it's been an erosion of that relationship, like over the last 60 to 75 years. And I don't think it's coincidental that also has come in with television and movies and everything else where, everything can be depicted on screen, everything that can be communicated on screen, and then it just opens the door more and more and more. Slowly but surely. I mean, I remember in the 80s, it was, you're not going to see nudity on TV, right? And
like I Love Lucy, they had separate beds, and then slowly they just went together, and then now it's anything.
I've got 9, really, to be realistic, I have 17 channels, but you can only watch 9 of those channels, okay?
So you have 9 channels.
Yeah, when you're a kid, if those of you old enough, ABC, NBC, CBS,
PBS.
There was a Channel 9 and there was a PBS, right?
Yeah.
Channel 9 back then was the local channel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got those 5. I've got like a Jimmy Swaggart. He's got a Christian network, and I've got a Spanish channel.
Univision, Sábado Gigante.
But you can catch it on that if you're not paying attention. All of a sudden you're going to see nudity, and it's just crazy where it's come.
Yep.
But what Ishtar's go ahead.
Well, it pushes the line. The line just gets pushed further and further and further.
Agreed.
But this goddess is overturning the biblical, you could call, sexuality values, sexual values regarding family, regarding gender, regarding marriage, and starts to replace them with pagan values.
Right.
Think about this. We've seen America become completely sexualized.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What it would take, either one of you, how long? You could pull up porn in literally seconds.
Right.
On these little Apple idols. They're kind of.
They are.
Mine's a Korean one.
Here's a Korean idol. Here's an Apple idol.
Made in China. Not
Korea,
right now because they
probably
revolted
Korea.
at the Apple plant in China, but okay, we won't go there.
We're not going to the news yet.
Well, we will be coming back with that next week. But listen, well, maybe not next week, but you guys, unless something really big happens, you could pull up porn in seconds, probably.
Absolutely.
Right? And you could see this change in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So all the broken families, broken homes, broken children. That's Ishtar.
But
you
as
don't
an
even
adult,
you don't even have to try to get to porn.
No.
You can just search
if
for
you're
a term.
on YouTube and you pull something up in it, whatever it does, and then in the corner it has things. As a parent, we are. Our kids are older now, so they know. But when they first got their phones, it has to be like, what are you looking at? What are you doing on your phone?
Absolutely.
You got to pay attention because it can, just the click of a button.
Yep.
You type in the wrong word, it auto-populates. And
I would have had. I'm thank God.
Yeah.
I just thank God I didn't have something like this in my teenage years. But she pushes God out through sexualizing everything.
Yeah.
That's what she does. In the Greek language, one of the words for prostitute is pornio.
Yeah.
You literally get that word porn from this goddess. The literature that they have found through archaeology on this goddess is the first porn in the world.
Right.
It's talking about her.
Crazy.
The Greek word euro is where we get the word erotic.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from the Greek word euros, the Greek god Euros. There was a Greek god. And in Greek mythology, the mother of Euros, of erotic, was this goddess Ishtar. And so she's also the goddess that's behind witchcraft. And notice when the sexual revolution happened in the 60s, a lot of you may not know this, but you had an immediate explosion of witchcraft being reborn, becoming a regular staple of our society.
Yeah.
And you've got this new age thing that's so big that's come in. We have more witches in America right now than we do churchgoers in some large denominations.
Can I just say my only news thing of the day, I was looking at something yesterday. It said the number of people in England and Wales identifying as Satanists saw a 167% increase between 2011 and 2021. Like, look at that. Look at that.
Crazy.
That is just insane.
And I feel led to do this.
167%.
This is the second time. I you have to listen. I wasn't going to talk about this, but you have to be aware, right? And when you use your authority, this is for somebody today. I always, every day, I cover myself, and I actually do. I mention all the our podcast viewers, listeners, and subscribers, because you can pray over people groups.
Yep. Yeah.
Paul, read Paul's prayers. Do not cease to pray. Make it mention.
Yeah.
I mention you. I mention you. He's talking to the Ephesians, the Colossians, right? But what I'm saying is, you say, I command the principalities and powers, rulers of the darkness of this world, I just name them, the spiritual wickedness in high places, behind any curses that have been leveled against me and everyone I've mentioned today. In the name of Jesus Christ, I send you back to the cursor. And you can send it back to the cursor. And because it is so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is just, this is a demon goddess that showed up in many cultures, as I said earlier. She's really, you could call her the god or the demon that would be in charge of substances.
She's a busy demon.
Drug addiction, prescription drug addiction. Look at when cocaine hit in the 70s. Then you had crack in the 80s. Then you went on to meth in the 90s. There's more Americans addicted to drugs right now than there has been at any other time. Drugs are quickly being legalized.
Yes, they are. I know.
And she was behind these substances in each culture. Jonathan Cahn said he was looking back at the ancient inscriptions and writings where this goddess of Ishtar, or Venus, what the Bible calls Ashtoreth, she actually calls herself both male and female.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
In the ancient writings. Well, gee, what a coincidence. That whole thing is coming on like a storm.
Yeah.
It is.
And in an old hymn that sung praises to her out of one of these cultures, it was singing praises to her, and it actually had the words, "You are the God that turns a man into a woman and a woman into a man."
That is so crazy. And I'm saying, you look at what's happening today and you're like, okay, I understand now.
She's here.
She's
Right.
here.
Yeah.
She's here. She's got her hooks in this country. And, I would say this God is back. And Jonathan Cahn wrote this book, Return of the Gods, because he believes that you have to see exactly what you're dealing with. You have to know it. And I totally agree with that. I mean, he points out that this is what Moses dealt with. This is what Elijah dealt with.
Yeah.
And we having Jesus in us, which they didn't, he's saying in this book, you have to fight the fight.
Yeah.
You have to stand up for your beliefs.
Yep.
You have to stay away from compromise. As we're going to get into in the 7 letters to the 7 churches from Jesus Christ himself in the book of Revelation, many commentators believe Jesus Christ is warning the end time church, the church of today, about the pitfalls of today. And this stuff is lining up. And a number of those churches in Revelations chapter 2 and 3, they compromised.
Yeah.
So that the world back then, the Roman Empire, wouldn't persecute them.
Right.
So they were trying to compromise to make their lives easier. And I think this is what is around the corner. We're going to have a choice. Are we going to compromise? Or are we going to stand up to this stuff?
But can I say they put the pressure on people, so people are afraid to even speak out against anything. You can't even say, I believe in the sanctuary of marriage, a man and a woman.
Yeah.
You get canceled
where do you get canceled?
Candace Cameron Bure just said, I believe
in the traditional marriage model, and
canceled. The left came at her.
Canceled from where?
Like social media, people are attacking her for her beliefs and saying she's not open-minded and she's closed-minded, and that's not the way the world is. The world is like, you can love anything. If I wanted to love a leaf and marry it, you can. Literally, you can. People have relationships with their vehicles. It's insane.
And if you want to be a wolf, you can be a wolf.
Yes, but I'm saying, so people are afraid. Thankfully, we have a lot of strong believers who aren't, but there are some people who are because, they don't know how to fight people.
Right.
Or, I don't know, make a stand and be bold about it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Christians that have been fooled into thinking if you are to hold a position means that you are coming against somebody else.
Right.
And the fact is you must actually. So you can have your position of I believe in a man and a woman. That's what makes a marriage. That doesn't mean that I hate or that I wish anything but the best for anybody else making their own decisions. But this is what I believe, and I'm going to stand up. And you can believe whatever you want to believe. Isn't that what
Jesus did? Over and over and over again in the Bible.
Yeah.
He loved the person, but didn't love the sin or what they were doing, and he made himself available to them to talk to them. But
he did not apologize for it, though.
No, he didn't.
That was one of the things that we see here is if you apologize for having something that offends somebody else, for believing in something that other people find offensive because it makes them feel less than, even though that's just in their own mind.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's what they go for. Like, I'm invisible because you don't see me the way.
Yeah.
I mean, you see people crying on TikTok because somebody said, you're a man, I actually called you a woman, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they're identifying as something else and they're crying about it.
Yeah.
They're saying, I feel invisible.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where you have to have a spiritual spine. You have to be able to go, look, this is what I believe. I believe that this is right. And you can believe it or not believe it, but I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, and I believe in the sanctity of marriage. That's
right.
Between
well, on
a man
last
and a
week's
woman.
episode, weren't we talking about the truths and how there's not a bunch of different truths? There's just one truth.
There's just truth.
But in this world, and that's what Baal does.
Right.
Baal, everything's truth. Your truth is truth.
Any religion is true.
It's all
as
truth.
long as it's true to you.
It's suddenly all truth, right? And but next week we're going to do the last member of what Jonathan Cahn calls the Dark Trinity. And you have Baal. We went over, and sometimes his wife Ishtar, as what she was called, his wife, because he's one of the ones she brings in. There's a third one. And Jonathan Cahn calls this the Dark Trinity. I'm just letting you know, from Baal to Ishtar, I skipped 70 pages of this book.
Here's so much revelation. This
guy, he's really anointed.
It answered so many questions I had about things that were happening and why things were allowed. And when you read this, you're like, it opened my eyes. Yes, I understand.
You know, he's got some amazing things. I can't even touch all these details in this book. I was looking at how am I going to outline this book in just 3 weeks? So much research, and he really is a gifted writer. You know, thank you so much, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn.
Yeah, it's a great
Remember,
book.
you can buy the book. You can buy this book on Amazon, The Return of the Gods. Please get it so that you can know exactly the principalities that we're dealing with because they've always been around. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun, and that is the truth. They have been around. They just repackaged themselves, and in a lot of ways, you can see what's coming.
Yeah.
You can by looking at what they've done in the past. So, with that, we're going to sign off. Do you guys have anything?
No, you still have the orange. You're in charge.
Aren't you glad we brought the fruit today?
Did you guys catch that? He just said, "Orange, you glad he brought the fruit today?" With that, we're going to go ahead.
Wow.
And thank you so much.
If you explain it, it's not as funny.
Thank you. I just want to make sure they caught it.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning into the Final Hour podcast. Please subscribe. God bless you.